A boy gave a sandwich to a homeless man. He had no idea it was a billionaire in disguise. Jacob Carter was no stranger to hunger. His stomach often growled before bed, and sometimes dinner was just a slice of toast with butter if they had any. He lived in a tiny apartment in the rougher part of Brooklyn with his mom and little sister, Bella. Ever since his dad left 2 years ago, Jacob had tried to be the man of the house, even though he was just a kid. Every morning, he walked Bella to school and then rode his old bike to his middle school. But Saturdays were different. That was the one day he could take his time and do something he loved, visit the big park by Grandview Street. Not because of the grass or the swings, but because that was where he could sit on a bench, watch people, and dream. He'd imagine himself in clean clothes with a backpack full of books, heading off to a fancy school. That Saturday morning, Jacob woke up to the sound of rain on the window, light, soft drops tapping the glass like a quiet song. He grabbed the only food left in the kitchen, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich wrapped in a brown envelope his mom had scribbled Jacob on, and slipped it into his jacket. At the park, the sky had cleared, and the air smelled like wet grass and promise. Jacob sat down on his usual bench, watching joggers and parents pushing strollers. That's when he noticed the man. He was sitting 2 benches away, dressed in a dirty trench coat, torn sneakers, and a baseball cap pulled low. His face was hidden behind a graying beard. People walked past him like he didn't exist. Some even pulled their kids away when they got too close. But Jacob watched. There was something about the way the man stared at the trees, like he missed something he couldn't explain. Jacob looked at his sandwich, then back at the man. Without thinking, he stood up, walked over, and held it out. "Hey, you hungry?" he asked, voice soft. The man looked up, eyes tired but kind. He studied Jacob for a moment. "You giving me your lunch?" he asked, voice raspy. Jacob shrugged. "You look like you need it more." There was a long pause. Then the man took it slowly, like it was something fragile. "Thank you," he said quietly. "No one's given me anything in a long time." Jacob smiled. "It's just a sandwich." But it wasn't. That sandwich would turn Jacob's whole life upside down, because the man he had just fed wasn't homeless. He was Mr. Everett H. Miles, owner of Miles Tech Industries and one of the richest, most powerful men in America. And this little boy's kindness was about to be rewarded in a way no one could have imagined. The sandwich was soft, slightly warm, from being in Jacob's pocket, and tasted sweeter than anything the old man had eaten in weeks. He took small bites, savoring it, eyes flicking up now and then to watch Jacob sit quietly nearby. "Name's Jacob," the boy finally said. The man nodded. "Thank you, Jacob. I'm, George." It wasn't a lie. Not really. George was his middle name. Everett H. Miles had chosen it on purpose, just like he had chosen to disappear from the world for a while. 3 weeks ago, he had walked out of his marble penthouse, left his phone, assistant and company behind, and vanished. No security, no suit, just silence. He'd had enough. Enough board meetings, fake smiles, and headlines calling him either a genius or a heartless billionaire. After a near heart attack and a betrayal from his closest friend, Everett had felt the urge to know something deeper, something real. So he shaved his head, trimmed his beard into a messy disguise, bought some ragged clothes from a second-hand store, and began living like the people he passed by every day. The ones he never truly saw before. And today, of all the people in that huge, fast-moving city, it was a scrawny, wide-eyed 13-year-old who noticed him. Jacob didn't ask him for anything, didn't flinch, didn't act like he was better. He just gave. "You always feed strangers?" Everett asked, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Jacob smiled. "Nah, just the quiet ones. My mom says the quiet ones carry the heaviest things inside." Everett looked at him sharply. That was surprisingly deep for a kid his age. Jacob stood up, brushing crumbs off his jeans. Gotta get home. Mom's working double shifts. I watch my sister on Saturdays. Everett nodded. You're a good kid. Jacob hesitated. Then he reached into his jacket again and pulled out a small granola bar, the last thing he had. He placed it gently next to the man. Just in case you're still hungry later. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Everett with a full stomach and a full heart. Back in his quiet apartment that night, Everett sat on the floor, staring out the window. The city lights sparkled below like tiny fires. He thought about Jacob. That boy didn't have much. Everett could tell from his worn shoes and patched sleeves. Yet he gave everything, not out of pity, but out of kindness. And for the first time in weeks, Everett smiled. Maybe this journey wasn't just about disappearing. Maybe it was about rediscovering what really matters. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small notepad. In bold letters he wrote, "Find Jacob Carter." The following Monday, Jacob returned to school, his shoes squeaking with every step in the hallway. His classmates ignored him, as usual. Jacob wasn't exactly the kind of kid who stood out. He was too quiet, too thin, and too ordinary, but he didn't mind. He was used to being invisible. What he couldn't stop thinking about was that man, George. Jacob wondered where he slept, what he ate when people didn't hand him food. He wondered why a man like that looked so sad, even when he smiled. The kind of sad that doesn't show up in tears, but in the way someone stares into nothing. That week, Jacob started making an extra sandwich. Every day, he'd sneak it into his backpack, along with a napkin and an apple if they had any left. His mom never noticed. She was too busy juggling shifts at the diner and keeping their bills from swallowing them whole. Every afternoon after school, Jacob rode his bike to the same park bench, and every day the man was there. They didn't talk much, just a few words here and there. But over the next few days, Jacob noticed something. George didn't seem quite so hunched. He started sitting up straighter, brushing his beard, even cleaning his shoes with an old rag. He was still quiet, but not as empty. One day, Jacob sat next to him and said, "You ever have dreams, George?" The old man looked at him sideways. "Dreams?" "Yeah, like stuff you want to do when you grow up." Everett hesitated. He had once dreamed of being a builder, then a pilot, then a tech inventor. Somewhere along the way, it had all turned into stocks, mergers, and cold boardrooms. "I used to," he said softly. "Then I got busy surviving." Jacob nodded like he understood. "Same. But I want to be something big, not famous or anything, just important. Like I want to fix things, maybe help people." Everett smiled. "You're already doing that." Jacob looked surprised. "Me? You gave a sandwich to someone everyone else ignored. That's not nothing." Jacob's face flushed red, but he smiled. "You're weird, George." Everett laughed. A real laugh. It had been a while. That night, Everett walked into a 24-hour diner and used the payphone near the back. He dialed a number he hadn't called in weeks. His lawyer picked up after 2 rings. "Mr. Miles, are you okay?" "I'm fine," Everett said, keeping his voice low. "I need you to do something for me, quietly." "Of course, sir. Anything." "I want every detail on a boy named Jacob Carter. Lives in Brooklyn, about 13 years old. And I want it fast." "Sir, may I ask why?" Everett paused. "Because he reminded me I'm still human." To be back at home, Jacob and Bella sat on the floor, doing their homework under the yellow flickering light. His mom had left a note. "Late shift. Mac and cheese in the fridge. Love you both." Jacob thought about George as he scribbled math problems into his notebook. He had no idea that across the city, someone was already turning the gears of fate in his favor, because the richest man in America had just found a reason to live again. And that reason was Jacob Carter. It was just after midnight when Everett's lawyer, Alan Whitmore, emailed him the first part of the report. Jacob Carter, age 13, student at Oakbridge Middle School, Brooklyn. Lives in a 2-room apartment with his mother, Sandra Carter, and younger sister Bella. Father abandoned the family 2 years ago. Mother works 2 jobs, diner waitress and night cleaner. No criminal records. No trouble at school. Quiet, polite. Grades average, attendance perfect. Everett stared at the screen for a long time, his hand hovering over the keyboard. There was something about the boy's world that felt painfully familiar. Not in the details, but in the emotion of it, the quiet battles, the invisible strength it takes to smile when nothing is easy. The next morning, Everett didn't go to the park right away. Instead, he boarded a city bus and rode it to Jacob's neighborhood. It was the kind of place he had once only driven past in tinted limousines, never bothering to look. Now he stood on cracked sidewalks, saw kids playing barefoot soccer in alleys and mothers dragging grocery bags twice their weight. He found Jacob's building easily, a faded brick complex with broken steps and windows patched with cardboard. He didn't go inside. He didn't have to. From across the street, he could see the apartment's thin curtain fluttering in the breeze. That evening, Jacob showed up to the park later than usual. His forehead was sweaty, his backpack heavier than normal. He plopped beside Everett with a tired sigh and handed over the sandwich. Today it was tuna. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "Had to walk Bella from her after-school program." Everett took the sandwich slowly. "You do a lot for her," Jacob shrugged. "She's my little sister. Mom says family comes first. Always." Everett bit into the sandwich and nodded. "Your mom sounds wise." "She is. Even when she's tired, she finds a way to make us laugh. She says laughter is free, so we better use it." They sat in silence for a bit, watching pigeons flap near a hot dog stand. Everett cleared his throat. "Jacob, have you ever thought about what would happen if someone gave you a chance? A real one, like a full ride to a great school, a place where you could learn to fix things, build things, be someone big?" Jacob blinked. "Like a scholarship?" "Exactly," Jacob chuckled. "We barely get by on food stamps. I don't even think about stuff like that. Dreams cost money." Everett's heart clenched. He wanted to tell Jacob everything, that he wasn't really homeless, that he was Everett Miles, that he owned a company larger than most small nations. But it wasn't time. Not yet. He had to do this the right way. So instead he said, "What if I knew someone who could help?" Jacob turned to him slowly, eyes wide. "You know someone?" "Maybe." Jacob smiled. "That'd be cool. But I wouldn't take it if it meant leaving my mom and Bella behind." Everett looked at him thoughtfully. "What if it helped all of you?" Jacob didn't speak for a long time. Then finally he said, "Then I'd say thank you." And Everett nodded, because he was already making the calls, already preparing the path. This wasn't just about charity anymore, it was about justice, for a boy who gave his only sandwich to a stranger. And by the end of that week, Everett Miles had returned to his luxury suite, but not to stay, just to prepare. He took a long shower, shaved clean for the first time in weeks, and put on a simple navy blue blazer. No designer logos, no diamond cufflinks, just a clean, warm presence. Then he made a call to one of his company's non-profit divisions, the Miles Foundation. "I want a scholarship created," he said to the director. "Name it after my late mother, Cecilia. It will go to one student. Full academic ride, and I want it to come with family housing support and a monthly stipend." The director's voice was stunned. "That's incredible, Mr. Miles. Do you already have a candidate in mind?" "I do," Everett said quietly. "And I want the offer delivered in person. But not by me. Not yet." Meanwhile, Jacob didn't go to the park that Saturday. He was home, helping Bella with her spelling homework while their mom took a rare nap on the couch. The electricity had gone out for a few hours earlier that day, and the fridge had started to smell. Jacob had tried not to be frustrated. He was used to things breaking. The knock on their door was soft. Jacob answered it. A tall woman in a charcoal skirt suit stood in the hallway, holding a folder and wearing a kind smile. "Good afternoon. Are you Jacob Carter?" Jacob blinked. "Yeah. I'm from the Cecilia Miles Foundation. May I speak with your mom?" Minutes later, Sandra Carter stood by the door, eyes wary. The woman explained everything, how the foundation had identified Jacob as a candidate for their new academic support program. A scholarship to a top private school, rent support, food allowance, after-school care for Bella, career guidance for Sandra herself. Sandra looked at Jacob. "Did you apply for something?" Jacob shook his head, speechless. The woman smiled, gently. "Someone nominated you, someone who sees something special in your son." Tears filled Sandra's eyes. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," the woman said softly. "Your son already changed a life. It's only fair someone gives him a chance to change his own." Jacob looked at his mom, then at Bella, then back at the woman. "Can I still come home after school?" he asked. "Of course," she said. "This is about making your life bigger, not taking it away." Back at the park the next day, Jacob ran up to the bench, breathless. George Everett was already sitting there, a simple brown paper bag in hand. Jacob dropped beside him. "You won't believe what happened." Everett smiled. "Try me. There's this lady from some Cecilia something foundation. She said I got picked for a scholarship, full ride, books, everything, and help for my mom too." Everett's heart swelled. "That's amazing." Jacob squinted at him. "Did you have anything to do with this?" Everett's smile widened. "Maybe I told someone you deserved a shot." Jacob laughed. "George, you're something else." Everett looked at him, warmth in his chest. "You're something else too, Jacob." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Jacob unwrapped his sandwich and held out half. "Want some?" Everett looked at it. The same kind of sandwich Jacob had shared with him that first day. "Absolutely," he said, taking it gratefully. Because now it wasn't just a sandwich. It was a symbol of kindness, of hope, of a future about to unfold in the most unexpected way, both their lives forever. Jacob's life began to change faster than he could understand. Within 2 weeks he was enrolled in Westmore Academy, an elite private school on the other side of the city. His uniform was new, stiff, and smelled like fresh cotton and possibility. He had never worn shoes so shiny in his life. The school halls were bright and clean, filled with kids who had never worried about where their next meal would come from. Most of them had drivers, iPads, and last names that came with legacies. Jacob had his backpack, a pencil case his mum bought at the dollar store, and a heart still unsure if he belonged. But he remembered what George had said. "You're already doing big things." So Jacob walked tall. At home, things were shifting too. For the first time in years, Sandra Carter wasn't working 2 jobs. The foundation had helped her secure training for a higher-paying position, and Bella was enrolled in a new after-school reading club. Their fridge stayed full, the lights stayed on. The laughter at night became more frequent, but one question lingered in Jacob's mind every day. Who really nominated me? He had asked George a few more times, but the man had just chuckled and shrugged as if it didn't matter. One Saturday afternoon, Jacob showed up at the park with 2 sandwiches, turkey and cheese, George's favorite by now. But the bench was empty. Jacob waited and waited. George never came. That same evening, in a towering glass building across the city, Everett Miles sat in his office, not in rags, not in shadows, but in a suit that fit like success. The boardroom, was filled with executives awaiting his return to public life. But Everett wasn't thinking about profit margins. He was thinking about Jacob. He stood before the board with calm authority. "I've made a decision," he said. "We're redirecting 10% of our annual budget toward underserved youth programs, education, mentorship, real opportunity." A woman in a blazer frowned. "That's a lot of money, sir." Everett nodded. "It's not money. It's investment. In kids like Jacob Carter." The room fell silent. "Who is that?" one man asked. Everett smiled faintly. "A boy who gave away his lunch without asking for anything in return. A boy who reminded me of everything I forgot I wanted to be." He paused. "Before I was Everett Miles, I was just a kid with a sandwich and a dream, too." The next Saturday, Jacob waited at the park again. Still no George. He stood up, feeling the wind shift, and decided to walk home early. As he crossed Grandview Street, a black town car rolled to a stop beside him. A suited driver stepped out. "Jacob Carter." Jacob blinked. Yeah." The driver opened the back door. "Someone would like to speak with you." Jacob hesitated, then slowly stepped inside. And there, sitting in the back seat, was George, clean-shaven, wearing a crisp navy suit. Except it wasn't George anymore. It was Everett Miles, the billionaire from the news, the face from company buildings, the man everyone talked about. Jacob's jaw dropped. "Wait, what?" Everett gave a soft smile. "Hi, Jacob, I think it's time I told you the truth." The car's interior was quiet, except for the faint humming of the engine and the sound of Jacob's heartbeat thudding in his ears. He stared at the man beside him, slick suit, clean face, gold watch peeking from his sleeve. This was not George, the quiet man who ate peanut butter sandwiches and smiled like he'd forgotten how. "You're Everett Miles?" Jacob asked in a voice barely above a whisper. Everett nodded. "Yes." Jacob shook his head, his hands trembling slightly. "But you were sitting on a bench with holes in your shoes." Everett chuckled softly. "I still have those shoes. Why would someone like you pretend to be homeless?" Everett looked at Jacob, his expression serious. "Because I forgot what it means to be human." He turned slightly, facing the boy. "Fully. I had everything, money, success, respect, but I lost something along the way, my heart. I became cold, tired. After a health scare and a betrayal from someone I trusted, I walked away. I wanted to see life again, real life, not from a skyscraper window or a private jet, but from the ground." Jacob blinked. "So, the sandwich, that sandwich brought me back to life," Everett said, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't know who I was. You didn't expect anything. You just saw someone who needed help, and you gave." Jacob looked down at his lap. "It was just a sandwich." "No," Everett said. "It was hope, and it reminded me that people like you still exist, that I can be more than just a name on a building." The car pulled up in front of a tall building downtown. Everett leaned forward and gestured. "I want to show you something." Jacob followed him, unsure of what was happening. They entered a sleek glass elevator and rode to the top floor. The doors opened to a bright, airy office with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. "This," Everett said, "is the heart of Miles Tech." Jacob looked around, wide-eyed. "It's huge. And one day," Everett said, "you'll run something like this too." Jacob turned to him. "Me?" Everett smiled. "If you want it. But it'll take work, discipline, time, and I'm going to help you get there." He placed a hand on Jacob's shoulder. "I've arranged for a mentor program. You'll have the best tutors, real-world experience. You'll shadow people in the company, learn how everything works. But this isn't charity, Jacob. This is investment." Jacob swallowed hard. "I don't know what to say." Everett looked him in the eye. "Say you'll keep being you, keep being the boy who gives, without expecting anything back. The world needs more Jacobs." The sun was beginning to set behind them, casting a warm orange glow across the skyline. Jacob took a deep breath. I will. Everett nodded. Good, because this is only the beginning. Back at home, Jacob's mom stared at the business card Jacob handed her later that evening. Everett H. Miles, Chairman and CEO, Miles Tech Industries. Personal line, for Jacob Carter. Sandra sat down slowly. Jacob, is this a joke? He grinned. No, Mom, he's real, and he's going to help us. Tears welled up in her eyes as she pulled her son into a tight hug. You're a good boy, she whispered. God must have seen that. Jacob closed his eyes, a smile forming. It had started with a sandwich, and now it was growing into something even bigger than he could imagine. 3 weeks later, Jacob walked through the wide double doors of the Miles Tech Innovation Center. His backpack was slung over one shoulder, and his school blazer felt a little more comfortable than it had on day one. Still, he couldn't help feeling out of place among the polished marble floors and glass walls. But Everett had told him, this place is just a building. The real power comes from people who believe they belong. So Jacob held his head high. He was met by Ms. DeWitt, a soft-spoken woman with silver glasses and a bright red folder. Welcome back, Mr. Carter. She smiled. Mr. Miles is in a meeting, but he left instructions for you to join the Junior Innovation Team today. Jacob blinked. Junior? What? She chuckled. You'll find out. Minutes later, Jacob entered a bright, tech-filled workspace buzzing with activity. Laptops, whiteboards, robotic arms. It looked like something out of a science movie. Young man in a hoodie turned and grinned. You must be the sandwich kid. Jacob blushed. That's me, I guess. Don't worry. We've all heard the story. You're kind of a legend around here. Jacob couldn't believe it. In this space filled with college interns and young engineers, he wasn't just the poor kid from Brooklyn anymore. He was the boy who gave without asking, and that had become a story everyone respected. The team leader, a woman named Lila, guided Jacob through simple coding challenges and brainstorming games. She treated him like a teammate, not a charity case. At lunch, Jacob sat with them, talking about gadgets, dreams, and the things they wanted to invent someday. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel invisible. Across the city, Everett watched a video feed from his office as Jacob worked with the innovation team. His eyes softened at the boy's eager expression. Alan, his lawyer, entered the room. I have the full mentorship outline you requested. Includes 5-year academic support, 3 summer internships, and early access to university-level resources. Everett nodded. Perfect, and make sure Sandra Carter gets full support for her job training. I want her dream job, not just any job. Yes, sir, and if I may ask, why this boy? Why not hundreds like him? Everett leaned back. Because when I was lost, he gave me something that no one else did. Kindness without condition. Not to impress, not for recognition, just because. Alan nodded slowly. Understood. Everett stared out the window. I've given out thousands of checks in my life, millions in donations, but that sandwich, that boy, gave me something no amount of money ever could. That weekend, Jacob returned to the park. He sat on the same bench with 2 sandwiches just like before. A man in old jeans and a ragged cap walked by slowly. Jacob smiled and stood. Hey, you hungry? The man looked surprised. Yeah, I guess. Jacob handed over the sandwich, just like before. The man stared at it, then at Jacob. Why'd you do that? Jacob shrugged. Because someone once did the same for me, and it changed everything. The man nodded slowly, taking a bite. Jacob sat back down, watching the city move. He didn't need a suit or a title to feel important. He was already building something big, one act of kindness at a time. It was the first Monday of the month, and a rare buzz filled the top floor of Miles Tech headquarters. The boardroom, normally filled with older executives in sleek suits and power ties, had a new addition, a seat at the end of the table reserved for the youth voice. And sitting in that seat, trying hard not to fidget, was 13-year-old Jacob Carter. He had traded his school backpack for a messenger bag and was dressed in a clean blazer, a blue shirt, and polished shoes. His mom had ironed the clothes twice that morning, her eyes misty with pride. Bella had drawn a crayon picture of Jacob shaking hands with a king and tucked it in his folder. Everett stood at the head of the table. "Before we begin today's quarterly review," he announced, "I'd like to introduce someone who, in my opinion, embodies the values this company should stand for: humility, kindness, and courage." He turned toward Jacob. "This is Jacob Carter. Some of you know him as the boy who gave me a sandwich when I had nothing, but I know him as something more. He reminded me of who I used to be and who I want this company to become." The room was silent. Some raised eyebrows. Others nodded. Respectfully, Jacob cleared his throat and stood slowly. Hi." A few soft chuckles broke the ice. "I'm not really a business person or anything," Jacob said nervously, "but Mr. Miles told me that ideas can come from anywhere. So, I just want to say, maybe we can use all this big brain power to make things easier for people like my mom. People who work 2 jobs and still can't fix the fridge. Or kids like me who didn't know people cared until someone showed up." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thoughtful. Then one of the senior board members clapped. Others followed. Everett smiled, proud. Later, after the meeting, Everett walked Jacob to the elevator. "You did well," he said. "I was shaking the whole time," Jacob replied, grinning. "I thought I was going to pass out." Everett laughed. "You're going to get used to it. We've got plans, Jacob, big ones." As they stepped outside, a group of reporters spotted them. "Mr. Miles, who's the boy? Is this your son?" Everett placed a hand on Jacob's shoulder. "He's someone you'll be hearing more about soon." Jacob grinned awkwardly. After all, just a few months ago, he was invisible. Now he had a seat at the table. That night back at home, Jacob ate. Dinner with his mom and Bella at a real dining table. No more folding chairs. No more flickering lights. Sandra raised her glass of juice. "To second chances," she said. Jacob raised his. "To sandwiches." Bella giggled. "To being famous." They all laughed. But Jacob knew this wasn't about fame. It was 1 year later. The sun beamed over Grandview Park, where the trees swayed gently, just as they had that first day. Kids played on swings, joggers passed, vendors shouted about hot dogs and lemonade. The city moved, unaware that on one particular bench sat a boy who had once been invisible. Jacob Carter was no longer just a kid from Brooklyn. He was now a full scholarship student at Westmore Academy. He was a youth representative for Miles Tech's Community Advisory Board. He had spoken at 2 conferences, sat in private meetings with policymakers, and appeared on morning talk shows, not as a celebrity, but as a voice for those still unheard. And yet, here he was again, on the same bench, with 2 sandwiches. He took a bite of his own and waited. Then, just like before, a man approached, mid-40s with a worn-out coat and calloused hands. He looked tired, defeated. Jacob stood. "You hungry?" he asked, offering the sandwich. The man blinked, confused. "Why would you?" Jacob smiled. "Because I used to sit where you are, and someone gave me one." The man took it with shaking hands. Jacob sat beside him. "Want to talk?" he asked. The man looked surprised. "No one's asked me that in years." Jacob shrugged. "Well, I'm not everyone." They sat in silence, broken only by birds and laughter in the distance. Jacob looked up at the sky, remembering everything that had happened in 1 year. His mom now ran a small catering business. Bella had just won a reading award. And George, no, Everett, still called him every Sunday night to check in, mentor him, and remind him that his story wasn't done yet. "You know," Jacob said to the man beside him, "a sandwich saved my life." The man looked at him. "Seriously?" Jacob nodded. "Because when you give from the little you have, the world sometimes gives back more than you can imagine." The man didn't respond. He just ate slowly, eyes moist, shoulders relaxing just a little. Jacob stood after a while, brushing crumbs from his lap. "I'll be here next Saturday," he said. "Same bench. Bring a story." The man nodded. Jacob turned and walked toward the bus stop, where a van from the youth program waited to pick him up. As he walked, he passed a newspaper stand. The headline read, "From Sandwich to CEO, Teen Leader Inspires Nation." He smiled, not because he was famous, not because he had made it, but because he was finally making a difference. And it had. All started with a single sandwich on a park bench, offered to a stranger the world had stopped seeing. Now, Jacob saw them all. About making his life and others better. One saw